It's baked in the cake. That's the corruption in Illinois. And people always ask me, how in the world have we gotten to this point? Is it Michael Madigan? Is it Governor J.B. Pritzker? Who got us to this point and when? When did we get to this point? So, a couple of quick hits for you. Kwame Raoul, he wants that student loan debt canceled. Boeing is moving out of the state of Illinois, and feeble President Joe Biden is going to visit Chicago here soon. So, Illinois Attorney General Kwame Raoul, along with 8 other attorneys general, they're urging President Joe Biden to fully cancel federal student loan debt owed by every federal student loan borrower in the country. Wow, that's more than 1.7 trillion is currently owed to the federal government by student borrowers. Hey, it's Conservative Cat Cities 92.9 The News and talk of Bloomington Normal. If you're just joining us, we're going to dive into how corrupt the state of Illinois truly is. And I'm going to read a little bit from our Constitution, and you're going to be shocked, absolutely shocked by this Article 2 Amendment to you are going to completely lose your mind. The reason why I wanted to talk about this, I got to tour the Capitol a little bit, talk to this amazing tour guide. His name was Joel. It was a pretty amazing experience for me today. But I wanted to talk about the Constitution. But before we hit it, I really want to talk about what a mess Kwame Raoul is in that Attorney General's office, because he literally does nothing. That's what it boils down to, is that he literally does nothing. Opponents of this policy for approving this forgiveness of all student loan debt, which just absolutely sounds insane. Opponents say that the policy forces taxpayers to fit the bill, and it's unfair to Americans who didn't attend college, never borrowed, or have paid off their college debt. That's really who should be mad about this. They paid off their college debt, and now you're expecting them to pay off everybody else's. Also, Boeing is moving out of Illinois, which is a major corporation, and they're going to be leaving the land of Lincoln for greener pastures. According to the Wall Street Journal, Boeing is expected to relocate from Chicago to Arlington, Virginia. The new headquarters is going to allow company officials to move closer to government influencers in the nation's capital. Boeing moved its headquarters to Chicago in 2001, leaving its Seattle home after 85 years. And President Joe Biden, he's visiting Chicago next week. Ugh. I mean, it's fitting. Maybe he will actually see what a mess Chicago truly is, and then maybe he'll stop things like defunding the police. And make no mistake, that's exactly what they're doing. I think I'm going to touch on this little tidbit here real quick. Pontiac Prison, they're looking to cancel some of the wings in the Pontiac Prison. They're going to close them down. You know what kind of repercussions that's going to have? What they want to do is centralize prisons. They want to centralize it. They want to globalize it. And it's their entire ploy scheme. President Joe Biden, he's paying Illinois a visit next week, and it's the first time he's been to the state since October. Biden has been traveling to Chicago to speak. He's going to be traveling there to speak at the 40th International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers International Convention. The event was originally scheduled for last August, but it was delayed. COVID. Ugh. Another FOID kiosk is being set up right here in the state of Illinois. Illinois State Police recently opened up their 4th firearms owners identification kiosk to help Illinoisans apply and update their FOID card. Shall not be infringed. So this is what I wanted to touch on today. In our Illinois Constitution, here we go. This is what it says. All right, if you go to the Section 2, or Article 2, Section 2, it says powers of government. The enumeration in this Constitution of specified powers and functions shall not be construed as a limitation, shall not be construed as a limitation of powers of state government. Let me read that for you again. The enumeration in this Constitution of specified powers and functions shall not be construed as a limitation of powers of state government. That clause right there says that the government as unlimited power. Unlimited power. We have that written into our Constitution. Also, listen to this. Article 1, Section 22 of the Illinois Constitution says this: subject only to the police power, the right of the individual citizen to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Listen to this. Subject only to the police power. The right of the individual citizen has the right to keep and bear arms, and it shall not be infringed. Subject only to police power. You know what that means? That means the police can infringe on your right to bear arms. That's what's written in the Illinois Constitution. That's what it says. This is our Constitution, folks. Now, I'm not exactly sure when that changed from just shall not be infringed, because the U.S. Constitution is supposed to be upheld by the Illinois Constitution, right? I'm not sure when, but I'm thinking it was sometime in the 1970s or thereafter in the Michael Madigan years where they started to change the Constitution. And they can't do that. You want to know why? Because here is what the Article 14 says in our Illinois Constitution. You have to abide by the U.S. Constitution whenever 3/5 of the members elected to each of the houses, House of the General Assembly, so that's the Senate and the House of Representatives, the question of whether a constitutional convention should be called shall be submitted to the electors at a general election next occurring at least 6 months after such legislative direction. Now, this needs to be done. A constitutional convention needs to happen in the state of Illinois because it is riddled with changes from the U.S. Constitution, and they're completely ignoring the 14th article within the Illinois state constitution that says that you cannot change what the U.S. Constitution says without calling a constitutional convention, and you can't change what the Illinois Constitution says without doing it. But guess what? That article I just read for you, Article 2, Section 2, it says that the government has no limits when it comes to power. And what needs to happen is that our legislators need to realize and that they have to get some sort of constitutional convention together. And this hasn't been done in a very long time. They need to get a constitutional convention together to change up how we look at this document, because this document, the fact that a police officer can infringe on your right to bear arms, and that is written down in a constitution that we are supposed to abide by, just boggles my mind. All right, coming up next, we're going to talk about how the governor is actually supposed to be writing the budget, not our House representatives or our senators. That's coming up next here on Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. We need to start demanding a constitutional convention. This is truly troubling. Hey, it's Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. And I got to tour the Capitol this afternoon, and we were talking to our tour guide, Joel, and it was just an absolutely amazing experience. And I got to thinking about the Constitution. We started doing some light reading, and we found some things that were kind of interesting. The fact that the Illinois legislators, senators, they have changed this Constitution, it's wrong. And it's unconstitutional, and they have to abide by the U.S. Constitution first. And that is provided by the Article 14. Article 14 gives Illinois the obligation to follow the United States Constitution first and foremost. And they're not doing that. They're not doing that. They're not even following their own Constitution. And here's an example, okay? The governor shall prepare and submit to the General Assembly at a time prescribed by law a state budget for ensuing the fiscal year. The budget shall set forth the estimated balance of funds available for appropriation at the beginning of the fiscal year, and the estimate receipts and a plan for expenditures, obligations during this fiscal year of every department, authority, public corporation, and a quasi-public corporation of every state college, university, and every public agency created by the state, but not of the units of local government and school districts. Okay. The interesting part here, it says the governor shall prepare and submit to the General Assembly at a time prescribed by law, a budget. That's not happening, folks. And that hasn't happened for a while. Actually, we can go back to 1970. That's when the shift happened, when Michael Madigan first came into power of some kind. The governor has to write up that budget. We are all under the assumption that our legislators and our Senate go back and forth and they create an appropriations of bills that add up to the budget. The budget this year was 3,700 pages long. And it just kept growing and growing and growing as the House and the Senate passed it back and forth to each other. And that's happened every single spring legislative session. I did not know this. I had no clue that is how our government works. I was under the assumption that our House of Representatives and our senators, they created the bill and then it went up to Governor J.B. Pritzker to sign. That's how the media reports it. You look at the Constitution here, folks. It says the governor has to prepare that body of that budget, and he has to do it in a time prescribed by law. This year's budget was passed in the dead of night by legislators, and then it goes up to the governor and he signs it. That's not what the Constitution says. The Illinois Constitution says that the governor has to do it. But get this, folks, get this. There's an amendment here. Are you ready? The General Assembly shall provide by law an audit of obligations, receipts of public funds and of the state, and the General Assembly, by vote of 3/5 of the members elected to each house, shall appoint an auditor general and remove him or for cause of by a similar vote. And they also say here, the General Assembly by law shall make appropriations for all expenditures and public funds by the state. Appropriations for the fiscal year shall not exceed funds estimated. So that what they're doing here, folks, they're not listening to Article. So this is Section 2. This is Article 4. This is the finance article, and this is 5, 6, 7, 8. This is Article 8. It's the finance article, and it lays out that the governor has to prepare that budget, and then it goes to the General Assembly by law. They shall make appropriations. Shall and may are very different in, bodies in the Constitution and bodies of government literature, right? Shall means they have to. The General Assembly has to look at this after, because it's listed here. It's Article 8, Section 2, and there's a clause here. It says, A, the governor shall prepare and submit to the General Assembly at a time prescribed by law, so he's got to do it in a timely manner, a state budget for the ensuing fiscal year. He's not doing that. What's happening is that these legislators are creating the budget, and then he's passing it. This is unconstitutional, folks, and the reason why this is happening is because, and I've laid it out for you, the powers of the state. It's Article 2, Section 2, the powers of the government. I'm going to read it again, and you need to call your legislator and be like, why does it say this in our Constitution? Can we get a constitutional convention here? The enumeration in this Constitution of specified powers and functions shall not be construed as a limitation. So construed shall not be taken as a limitation of government. They're saying, hey, folks, don't be confused by this whole Constitution thing. It doesn't matter. This article in this section, Article 2, Section 2, completely nullifies this entire Illinois Constitution. So what's the point? And we wonder why Illinois' credit rating is among the worst of all states. But then we've got Governor J.B. Pritzker touting that it's okay. It's okay because he heralded the most recent credit rating upgrade from the state's S&P ratings from going to a BBB to a BBB plus. This is what he had to say. Listen to this and then tell me that he is going to be a good governor. Listen to this. These achievements bear repeating balanced budgets 4 years in a row. The budget came by unconstitutionally there, Jelly Bean. Paying the state's bills on time. Early repayment of pandemic-related borrowing. Clearing out our debts left by previous administrations. Oh boy, I've got something on that too. In our Illinois Constitution, you are going to start pulling out your hair because I'm telling you, these people are baking the corruption in the cake. And what happens? You get into office, you get some good legislators in there, and they get tired because there's no way for them to truly come at this corruption unless a constitutional convention is called and they change this Illinois Constitution and change all of the provisions that allow them to get away with this sort of thing. Listen to this. Clearing out our debts left by previous administrations, making higher than required pension payments, setting aside $1 billion in savings for a rainy day. $1 billion in our current budget that he signed unconstitutionally. That is something this guy is touting. Now, I'm pushing up against break here, but I'm going to read this. No, this is in our Constitution. State debt for specific purposes may be incurred or the payment of state or other debt guaranteed in such amounts as may be provided either in a law passed by the vote or 3/5 of members elected to each house of the General Assembly or in a law approved by a majority of electors voting on the question at the next general election following passage. Any law providing for the incurring or guaranteeing of debt shall set forth the specific purposes and the manner of repayment.
Districts and
this
school boards
is ridiculous.
and school districts to opt out of this
conservative
comprehensive sex education curriculum that is not demanded by law, which I didn't even really know about. So Public Act 102-0522 is this act that it says, yes, you have to teach this comprehensive sex ed, but you can opt out of that. And Jeffrey, we were talking a little bit about this provision that says that, and I'm just going to read a little bit here. So in August of 2021, Governor J.B. Pritzker signed SB 818 into law. That created this Public Act 102-0522. This act effectively eliminated the law requiring sex education to be taught in public schools, and it replaces it with two new sections of Illinois Code on sex education. It's the comprehensive personal health, and then there is a and safety education, and then there's this comprehensive sexual health education. So there's two new sections of this Illinois Code that is implemented in health curriculum. The new sections set forth the standards for school districts that elect to provide instruction in these areas. The law states schools may choose and adapt the age and developmentally appropriate, medically accurate, complete, culturally appropriate, inclusive, and trauma-informed, comprehensive personal blah, 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 blah.
That's text of the law.
We all know that it's not these things. The culturally appropriate, inclusive, they're using these big, big words to try to confuse parents into thinking that this is a good thing. It's not. And they talked about trauma-informed, comprehensive personal health. I have no idea what that means. I mean, victims of sexual assault need to see a psychiatrist, need to see a psychologist, need to be with their family. A teacher fresh out of college, I don't think, is equipped to handle sexual sex victims. So that it says may and elect. Like if they elect, then you can or cannot. So that's the point of these provisions. Jeffrey, thanks so much for being here. Brian, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
So my question, and we were talking a little bit off air about this, how did this standard, this national standard, get leaked into this Illinois law? Why, and where did this language, even in this act, come from?
It comes from, they call it the National Sex Education Standards. And that's deceptive because they make it look like it's a government standard. It's a federal government standard using the word national. It's not even close to that. This is a standard that was written by extreme advocacy groups, SIECUS, Advocates for Youth. There's several of them, and they had sponsorships and contributors. Planned Parenthood is one of the biggest ones. And these groups, they're the ones that wrote these standards.
Mm-hmm. And with me in my hand, you can hear here, is a paper that Jeffrey handed over to me. These are the endorsing organizations. It's called Gender Spectrum. There's Human Rights Campaign, Center for Human Sexuality Studies. That's through Widener University, America School Health Association. All of these, it's not government. These are advocacy groups.
Right.
And Planned Parenthood, they're writing our legislation. Now, Brian, why are they writing our legislation? We were talking about follow the money.
Yeah, in most cases, you get grants. They get grants from the government, and it really all starts from there. So
they get grant to keep these advocacy groups going. Yeah. I've always kind of been curious about that. I'm like, how do these advocacy groups even continue doing what they're doing? Because how in the world do they gain that much support? I am sure that they're surviving on donations, grants, things of that nature. And it's just like from the government. And I don't think that there are a whole lot of parents out there that actually agree with their platforms.
You'd be surprised at the amount of money that's involved in all of this. And one of the biggest contributors is the Pritzker family. Jennifer Pritzker, he, she, whichever you want to call him or her,
was James Pritzker, and then became Jennifer.
Yes, that's
really?
That's JB's cousin.
Yes.
Oh boy!
And,
I didn't even know that. This is news to me.
Just do a quick search on it, and you will see the amount of money he has and what he sends back into organizations.
He puts billions and billions of dollars into the LGBTQ cause, along with a lot of other very large contributors.
And it's almost like, and I hate to say, putting lipstick on a pig. It's putting lipstick on a pig, and that's what these advocacy groups are. And I hate it when people come at me and they're like, well, they're doing good work for, kids and who identify as LGBTQ. You put so much money into this thing that you are pretty much facilitating a scenario where you are pretty pushing kids out to be LGBTQ. It's almost like they're I'm like something in my head. I'll just so it's I'm imagining an assembly line, right? And out comes from this closet is just an LGBTQ child going down this assembly line, right? And it's just this factory that produces these LGBT, and this factory has so much money where it can just produce so much media infiltration of ideas and to push all of that out there because they've got the money to do it. They've got the money for these nice websites. They've got the money for all this social media. They've got the money for all this advertising via, radio, TV, and they're infiltrating our kid and they're producing these LGBTQ kids. And it's like, they say that they're helping them, but they're actually the ones creating them. It's just what I'm thinking of.
It's just like any corruption out there. You have to follow the money. Mm-hmm. And the Pritzker family being they're one of the largest contributors of this. And if you follow, why would they do this? It's very simple. Take a look at what they own.
I just did a quick search of Jennifer Pritzker. I had no idea I didn't hear of James Pritzker. I did not know that James Pritzker transformed himself or transitioned into a female. I don't know. I have no idea. But oh gosh. I mean, Jeffrey, that is just not normal. It looks like Pritzker.
That's what a lot of people say. It looks like Pritzker and drag.
It looks like Pritzker and drag. What is this? I had no idea. What? Oh, I knew that there was a cousin, and I knew that there was a big family. I had no idea there was an actual transition to transgender member of the family.
Yeah.
Weird, bizarre.
But if you follow the money with this, there's a lot of money to be made with all this transgenderism, with the puberty blockers that are sold, and the cross-sex hormones that are required for the rest of your life if you transition. Not to mention the cosmetic surgeries that have to be done, double mastectomies. And such, and
not to mention the public schools and the education system and all of the money that they will be promising to these. They make that money, and then the schools are probably going to be making money if they teach this sort of thing. I wouldn't doubt that that's.
I so far haven't found any evidence that school districts are getting money directly from the state or anybody else to do this.
That
doesn't mean it's not happening, but I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah,
they seem to be caught in the middle, sort of. There's not a money trail from them yet, but it's hard. You got to do the research on it, and it always comes back to the money. It seems like. Yeah.
And Brian, we're talking with Brian Pullman and Jeffrey Wynn. They have a huge Facebook. Go there right now. Pull out your phone. Be safe if you're driving. Pull out your phone. Go look. Stand Up and Opt Out. That is a Facebook group. How strong is your Facebook group numbers?
Right now, I think we're at around 900 members, but we have about 1,200 visitors per day.
That's a massive Facebook group, and they've been traveling district to district trying to get these school boards to say no, because they can via this provision in the law. And what has that been like? What are some of the stories that you have for me? I know that we talked a little bit on the Morning Buzz when I had interviewed guys a little bit there. We were talking about this northern small school and some furry situation there. Have you come across districts that are just completely gone, where they are pushing this stuff and there is no end in sight, and they are ready to sexualize children to a level where we can't even imagine?
I'm just starting to find some of them. Normal is one of them, and 87, I believe, is probably another one. Bloomington 87. They don't.
You'd say one of the worst. Would you say
87 so far, because they won't even talk to me. I try to get information out of them, and they don't even want to talk about it. But they have come back and said that yes, they're implementing these standards. When I try to nail them down to what part of them, all are part, and they won't even answer that question. I will give Unit 5 a little credit for at least. Their representative came back and told me what they were going to implement. What at what age group.
Which is my case too. It's so funny, Jeffrey, because there was a superintendent, Barry Riley. We had a falling out. I don't understand, but he said that he wasn't going to take any more of my questions, and that he was completely done after there was a gun situation. I think that was what really set him off when I printed a story about him saying that metal detectors give a false sense of hope. We've had a really bad problem here in Bloomington when it comes to teenage gun violence, especially in black youth. That's just what it is. And there has been a whole lot of brawls. I know District 87 had brawls. Like, I'm talking beating kids, kids beating kids. And I'm talking gang activity. I'm talking social media where they're coordinating this stuff out. And I've seen the text messages. I've seen the screenshots. I've seen the police reports of them prosecuting kids that bring guns into the school. There was a kid with a gun who had a baggie of weed, and then the teachers had held a meeting, and there was audio recording. This is all available on cities929.com. There was an audio recording that was leaked to me from one of the teachers there tried to protect her name. Her name wasn't they figured out who it was, and they heckled her, and she pretty much was forced to quit, which is what happens, sometimes. And it was a hard thing for me to swallow. I know it bothered me for a long time, but she gave me this audio, and she had leaked this audio, and the audio was of these teachers in a room talking about the violence with kids, and they were chuckling a little bit about the kid bringing in some weed in a backpack. And this kid also had a gun. And the communication within the school is just a mess. I don't know. It's it's crazy. I don't know how the kids go there and feel safe. And I think we're going to start seeing this. And it's kind of crazy when you start to look into sexual victimology. What victims start to do, victims start to say, enough is enough. I am not having this anymore. Have you come across students on your journeys? And going district to district, have you had any student feedback?
The only student that I've really had any contact with was at one of our northern districts. We actually had a 16-year-old student stood up at the board meeting and spoke out against CSE. That was encouraging.
Wow. And when you say
CSE, Comprehensive Sex Education.
Comprehensive Sex Education. And it's kind of weird that they call it this. And I had a hard time looking it up, honestly, on ilga.gov, but I recommend you do it. It's a Public Act 020522. And it's weird that they call it Public Act. Do you know why they call it that?
The governor signed SB 818, and that turned it from a Senate bill to a public act.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and wouldn't it be cool if they just named it for what it was, a comprehensive sex bill, a comprehensive sex act? Well, we're pushing up against a break, but we're going to come back and we're going to talk about this a little bit more, and we're going to talk about where this stuff are and why. I want to get to the why of why this is happening, what in society has created these elements to where people are
Jeffrey
okay
Wynn,
with this. They
sort of
are a part of this group. It's an activist group, and they're doing a lot of great work. And he's got a thick binder, Jeffrey Wynn. He's got a thick binder. He's been doing a lot of work. Brian, he's got his documents over there. They just shared with me this Federalist article. And we're talking about who is doing this, who is funding the transgender movement, the sexual education movement. We're talking about this Public Act 102-0522. Look it up, ilga.gov. And this is an article out of the Federalist. I'm just going to read a little bit of it. I found exceedingly rich white men with enormous cultural influence are funding the transgender lobby and various transgender organizations. You would think that the left would be outraged about this kind of thing. It's rich white men, right? Isn't that a trigger word? So we've got Jennifer Pritzker, a.k.a. a male, who identifies as transgender, and George Soros. We've also got Tim Gill, Drummond Pike, Warren and Peter Buffett, John Stryker, a gay man, Mark Bonham, a gay man, and Rick Weiland. I haven't heard of some of these names, but they are pushing out LGBTQ-oriented sexual ideas, and it's kind of bizarre because they're men, right? They're grown men with wealth. Most of these billionaires fund the transgender lobby and organizations through their own corporations, including corporation organizations and including corporate corporations. Separate transgender issues from LGBT infrastructure is not easy to talk about. All the wealthiest donors have been funding LGBT institutions before they became LGBT oriented, and the only in some instances are monies earmarked specifically for transgender issues. So the transgender, the T, is how this all kind of started to snowball into this what we have today, and it is kids who are sexually confused. And in my hand, I'm holding these endorsing organizations, and we were talking about them a little bit. The National Coalition of STD Directors, Sister Song, The Women of Color Reproductive Justice Collective. We've got some of these in Bloomington Normal. I can't think of them off the top of my head, but there are organizations like this, advocacy groups.
Look them up. Look them up and just see what they stand for.
Yeah, and a lot of it is probably aligned with Planned Parenthood.
Yes.
And that's a whole nother thing where Planned Parenthood, we know they hate babies. So
Planned Parenthood stands to make a lot of money with this national sex education in our Illinois schools, because they're one of the leading suppliers of puberty blockers for preteen kids, and for the cross-sex hormones that are required for life for anybody that wants to transition. So they stand to make money, and it only makes sense because our health classes that we've had over the last few decades have cut into Planned Parenthood's income because they've been effective. They've reduced teen pregnancies and STDs. So now what do they have to do? They have to replace that income with something. So they're the ones pushing this transgenderism. And there's the reason why. They need that money. They need that income flow.
They need that income flow. It's terrifying. And when you start to think of how these people are involved in these organizations, and you're like, no, it couldn't happen here. Well, look at all these advocacy groups in Bloomington Normal. Who is checking them? Who is checking the money there? You have been in contact with Unit 5. Now, what's their argument? Against opting out? Because they haven't said that they're going to opt out.
Their argument is that they believe that they are being forced by the state, or this is what they want you to believe, that they're being forced by the state to adopt these standards. I don't know if it's because they just don't understand the law. They don't want to have that law interpreted by their attorney, which could easily be done, or if they just are outright lying to the public. Their
attorney is Kurt Richardson, so he would be able to look at the law and interpret it. And the way I interpret it, right, and the way some on your journeys, some attorneys have interpreted it, is there's this provision in there, and I'll just read it. Schools may choose to adapt the age and developmentally appropriate, medically accurate, blah, 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 blah.
And that word may is very, very critical. In legalese, may is used instead of shall. If it says shall, then he would be right if that word was shall, because then they have to adopt.
See, that word may is going to protect us, or if you're up for it. So on your journeys, and 134 school districts you've visited have said, yes, we're opting out of this. On your journeys, what have the parents been doing? How are you getting parents to get, because I try to get parents involved. I try to connect them with Angels for Freedom, all that stuff, and try to send them to the ILGA website, file out your witness slips. How are you getting parents involved, and have you seen parental pushback on this? Do parents want to sexualize their children?
I haven't seen any pushback from parents, but I will correct you on one thing here. We haven't visited all 134 of those districts. Some of that has been done through emails and phone calls.
Yeah.
I couldn't even tell you how many school board meetings I've been to, but it's not all of them.
Yeah.
But no, I haven't seen any pushback from. Well, I can't say any. There has been a very small amount. For some reason, where we have had the problems is where you have a parent that is transitioned to the or identifies as a different gender. And I want to say this. I say this at all the board meetings. I'm not here to judge adults who want to live alternative lifestyles. If they want to live these lifestyles, if they want to transition and all of this, that's up to them.
Yeah.
I draw the line when they want to push this stuff on our children. Yep. And that's got to stop.
Yeah, because it's up to a point. It's like these kids, and you look at sexual abuse of children, they have no say, and they're uncomfortable, right? They're in a position where they have to listen to authority, and that's what you have to do at school. And it's been something that's great. It's the same reason why we sit forward when we're sitting down in our chairs and looking at the teacher. It's just something that's there. The teacher, when they're standing up, they are the leader of that classroom, and you're supposed to sit
Respect
down,
and honor and-
respect and
right,
honor.
right.
And it's just something that's engraved in us as Americans, as human beings. I think it's just a natural thing for us to want to sit down and listen as well, and to respect authority when they stand up. And it's a societal norm. But when you're put in that position and the teacher starts talking about these things and talking about that, and it doesn't even align with your family values, and that's what we were talking a little bit about, fatherless homes.
Yes.
You start talking about a lesbian couple per se, right, in front of your I can't even believe this is coming out of my mouth, in front of your classroom of 5-year-olds, kindergarten,
right.
because this is what the sex education bill says.
starts out at K.
Starts out at K. You start getting up there and talking about lesbian couples and how they perform sex acts on each other, and that doesn't align with what you're seeing at home as a 5-year-old. What are you to do?
Well, and that does happen. And I would say, too, when I was in school, I didn't even know my teacher's first name. It was Mr. or Mrs., right? So the political, there's a politicization that gets into the children at that age, and why it's even in the classroom, right? I mean, I know it sounds simple, but it's the ABCs and 1, 2, 3s. It's the reading, writing, arithmetic, right? There shouldn't be anything else going on outside of that, and if there is, that is the one of the responsibilities as parents, among many others, to handle those situations. So I can't stress enough that what we're looking at here, this absolutely robs the child of their innocence, of their childhood. Let the children be, right? I'm not here to judge adults, but with these children, my heart grieves for these children, and this is a hill I think that we have to die on unquestionably. So.
Brian Pullman. We're talking with Brian Pullman and Jeffrey Wynn. And one thing I do want to end on, what's the goal for Stand Up and Opt Out? Where are you guys headed next? And what's your main goal at this point?
The ultimate goal is to have that awful law repealed. That public act has to go. But to get there, what it's going to take is we need to get every school district in the state of Illinois that we possibly can to opt out. I believe that if we get enough school districts not teaching this, that what's the use of having the law in the books if nobody's going to follow it?
Yeah.
So even if we can't get the legislature to do their job and get rid of something as bad as this is, maybe we can make ISBE understand that they have a law in the books nobody's following. So
yeah, and then it would be more likely for somebody to come forward and say, "Hey, can we get this law off the books?" I mean, Governor J.B. Pritzker did it with our what was it? The Rights of Conscience Act, COVID-19. He took that 22-year law off the books that gave us the right to say yes or no to a vaccine and to deny vaccination. He took that law off the books. It was a 22 standing law. So maybe at your next veto session, Jelly Bean, you can do that and just take the act off the books. Now, my fear is that this provision, and if you guys continue, and I'm not saying to stop, but my fear would be, in knowing our spring legislature, they look at this provision that says may, they change it to shall. And then they go in with an amendment, and we don't know when the amendment is, and then they go in at 3 a.m. and pass it, and then
that's already been attempted.
Has it?
Yeah, there's a representative in Chicago. I can't remember her last name. Starts with a V. But, yeah, she has already tried to have the opt-out, the parental opt-out, taken out of this bill. But it's the last I knew, her bill that she wrote, or whatever you
amendment,
call it, amendment that she wrote, is in committee, and it's hopefully going to die there.
Yeah. These bills coming out of committee, I mean, you never know. That's my thing. And I've noticed that when we're starting to gain some ground, the left picks it up, and they've got or I say the left, I don't even know. I don't even know who these people are anymore, because I mean, I know people who are left of center, but what's going on here is just not even on a political spectrum at all. And as soon as they catch wind of us fighting, then they have the majority, and then they have the power, the will, and then they go in, and then they start to change things under our noses. And it's like they've got the power to do it. We don't. We don't have all of those legislators on our side.
One of the things that I have done with Stand Up Opt Out is I've very heavily watched for political bias on the site. I don't want political bias on that group, and the reason for it is simple. It doesn't matter what way you vote. You're going to protect your children no matter what. That's the most important thing. I want to protect the children, and most people do. Most parents want to take care of their kids. Democrat, Republican, doesn't matter. Right. So I have tried to keep politics out of it, but it is hard to not see that it is coming from the left. I mean, it does come from the left in Springfield, but I have found that I know a lot of Democrats that are on our side, and they're in that group, and they're fighting right alongside of us.
Ultimately, it's a battle between what's right and wrong and good and evil.
Good and
That's
evil.
what it comes down to. There's no other way. It's spiritual warfare. It truly is. So, and we have to lay our lives down for our children. I don't know what I don't have a crystal ball. I can't tell you what the outcome of this is going to be in 5-10 years. I don't know.
Yeah, but we're already
So,
seeing the temporary outcomes of it, and the temporary outcomes aren't good. Suicide rates in
Yes.
transgender kids is insane.
Yes.
LGBTQ kids, it's insane, and it can't be ignored anymore. Hey, we're pushing up against break, but where are you going to be May 9th?
May 9th, I'm going to be in Bloomington. I'm giving a speech at the Angels for Freedom May 9th meeting, and I'll be talking a lot more about all of this, and I'll have resources for parents to opt their children out. I think it's important that we just flood the district with opt-out forms. I believe if we get enough kids out of Unit 5's indoctrination, what's Unit 5 going to do with all these kids? Where are they going to put them?
Yeah.
It's going to create chaos in that school if we can get enough
I'll
to do
grab
it.
those forms. We'll put them on our website, and we'll make it a downloadable PDF. Is that possible?
Yes.
You can
Yeah.
download it as a PDF. You
Absolutely.
can download it as a PDF, turn it into your district Unit 5. We're going to tackle
Illinois
Unit 5 and District 87, but we'll put that up on our
pretty much
website.
gives the state,
guys, thanks so much for being here. I appreciate it. This is such a hard topic.
And
I-
there's
I
also
can't
something
believe what you're
within
doing
the
for the state of Illinois, and I
finance
appreciate it.
section of our Illinois Constitution that allows the state of Illinois to take out debt on their own debt. Hey, it's Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. And before we took the break, we were hearing from Jeffrey Wynn and Brian Pullman. They are going at this thing in regards to Illinois law, right? So we talked about how the word shall and may kind of fit within this law, within this provision that requires teachers to teach this Comprehensive Sex Act. If you go to ilga.gov, and I highly recommend you do, and then also read the Illinois Constitution today if you get some time. Now, there is a Comprehensive Sex Act that says that you may, but you can opt out. Your districts can opt out of the Comprehensive Sex Act, which teaches your kids about sex at the age of 5. I mean, and to lightly put it, it talks about sex. It talks about sexual orientation. It talks about the ways you want to have sex. And you can opt out as a district. Our districts have not opted out yet. That's Unit 5 and District 87 here in Bloomington Normal. Ask your district if you've opted out. Now, they make it more known that you can opt out as a parent. However, we're not talking about just parents opting their kids out personally from this, right? Because we talked about how kids can ultimately influence other kids. So say a kid is actually taking part in the Comprehensive Sex Act curriculum, there's going to be some fallout. Even if you opt your kid out, there's going to be some fallout where your kid, even if you opt him out as a parent, or her out as a parent, they could catch some fallout from their peers in regards to this nasty grooming bill that comprehensively lumps all kinds of things about sex together and tries to push it onto your children. We need, as a state, as a county, as a community, we need to go out there and we need to get in our district's face and tell them, look, this is the law. Have your attorney look at it. It says may. You may teach Comprehensive Sex Act. You don't have to. The difference is may and shall. Those are very important words in documents concerning law. May means that you don't have to. You can opt out of this sort of thing, and especially for our kindergartners. I mean, come on, Comprehensive Sex Act. Unit 5, they're going to start teaching it, I think, at 8th grade, 9th grade, something like that is what they had said. But we need to ask them to opt out of it entirely because they can. Now, one other thing I wanted to touch on here. The Illinois Constitution, it says this in regards to the state's financing. State debt may be incurred by law in an amount not exceeding 15% of the state's appropriations for that fiscal year to meet deficits caused by emergencies or failures of revenue. Such law shall provide that the debt be repaid within 1 year of the date that it is incurred. Now, we need to get our debt and our deficit. We need to get that on track, but it's impossible. And here's why. State debt for specified purposes may be incurred, or the payment of state or other debt guaranteed, and such payments as may be provided either in a law passed by a vote of 3/5 of the members elected. Now, one thing you need to know is that Republicans have zip, zilch, nada, no say at all. They could literally not show up to General Assembly, to their sessions, and they have no say. Now, this provision here says that they can incur debt and they can use their debt in order to pay off that debt. So let me try to explain this as best as I can. You take debt, you have debt, right? So let's say you take out a credit card, right? You get another credit card to pay off that debt, and you can do that via the Illinois Constitution. That's pretty much what it boils down to. Now, we can't do that via our lives, right? You can't do that in your own homes. That doesn't work. So why in the world does our Illinois Constitution allow our state legislators and our state senators and our House of Representatives, why in the world is our Illinois Constitution allowing for that sort of thing to take place? Now, I wanted to play this interview I had with Jason Barrickman this past week in regards to this Pontiac prison. And then we're going to get into my thoughts here about Sharon Chung. And I am just appalled by this story. And I know I've been talking about it a lot, but I'm telling you right now, this is the lowest campaign tactic I've ever seen. It's the lowest campaign tactic I have ever seen. Here's my interview with Jason Barrickman this past week. Here we go. Jason Barrickman is on the line, and we're going to chat with him about this Pontiac prison and what our options are there. It sounds like they're closing down certain parts of the Pontiac prison. And who is doing this, Jason Barrickman? Thanks so much for being here, by the way.
Sure. Thanks for having me, Kat. Look, there's a report that was leaked from the Pritzker administration that spells out their intent to close some of the buildings, some of the wings of the Pontiac Correctional Center. The result of that is that there would be less inmates located in Pontiac. That could have an impact on the number of guards and staff members that are located there. It's really a big shift in policy that we haven't got much clarity from the Pritzker administration about. So people in central Illinois, Livingston County, certainly in the Pontiac area are very concerned about this. So I'm having a town hall next Tuesday night alongside Representative Tom Bennett at 6:30 p.m. at the Pontiac Township High School, and we're going to brief the public on what we know and talk about what may come from the decision by the Pritzker administration.
Why did he come to this decision, and what kind of impacts is it going to have on that prison if they close certain wings of the prison? It's not going to house as many prisoners, correct?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, the Pritzker administration, first of all, their policies, like the Safety Act, are resulting in less people going to prison. And the other thing the Pritzker administration is doing is they're reclassifying inmates so that not so many inmates are classified as maximum security, which is what Pontiac is. Instead, Pritzker's defining them as less than maximum, medium or what have you. So there's a lot of concern about this. We haven't been able to get a lot of information out of the Pritzker's team. We've invited them to participate in the town hall. Initially, the director of the Department of Corrections said that he would attend. Then he subsequently backed out. It's really too bad because the public wants to know. We want to know, right? What decisions have been made, what the thought process is on those decisions. And unfortunately, Pritzker's team has really just lacked transparency in any regard on this decision.
Oh, gosh. And what's sad about it is that the Pontiac prison can't go forward if they don't have the layout of what this means, because they've got to hire correctional officers. They've got to, brief their teams on how to run the actual prison.
Yeah, I mean, the prison, the Department of Corrections is a major employer in Livingston County. And within its ranks are lots of prison guards and other staff members, most of whom are very confused by this decision. They're very concerned about what it may mean to them and to their families. Are they going to continue to have a job? Are they going to have to be transferred to another facility? We've went through this before. Governor Blagojevich tried to close Pontiac entirely. He didn't succeed. Governor Quinn closed Dwight and succeeded in doing that, and that disrupted a lot of people's lives. It had an impact on the village of Dwight and the surrounding community. So there's a lot of concern here, and what we're looking for is some transparency from the Pritzker administration. I've always believed we have all these state facilities all over the state. We really should have a plan. The administration should have a plan for those facilities so that it doesn't seem like they wake up one morning and decide, hey, we're going to, close a wing of a state prison. We'd hope there's much more thought that's put into it than that. But thus far, we've not been able to get a lot of answers.
Yeah, and we're going to shift gears a little bit here. I did want to ask about, talking about not a whole lot of answers. Is Governor J.B. Pritzker, are there things coming out of Springfield out of committees in regards to the whole abortion and the draft opinion being leaked? Is there legislation that's already being pushed out there to kind of combat if there were to be some sort of overturning of Roe v. Wade at the Illinois State Legislature?
We haven't seen anything yet, and I do suspect it's going to come. Now, I would tell you, one of the things in Illinois is that it's a state that is, Pritzker defines it as very progressive. So there's already a lot of extensions of abortion rights that exist. You hear about the impact of Roe v. Wade being overturned and states changing laws or potentially changing laws on things even outside of abortion. I'm not sure that that's even necessary in Illinois. I mean, we'll see what's put forward. But take, for example, same-sex marriage, right? At the national level, people are saying that the effect of Roe v. Wade is that same-sex marriage could be not ruled constitutional at the federal level. Whether it is or isn't, Illinois, by law, legalized same-sex marriage long before the U.S. Supreme Court did. And so what I'm saying, Kat, is I'm not sure. There's going to be plenty of Democrats who will put forward bills, but I think we're going to have to look closely at what actually, impact Roe v. Wade being overturned would have on Illinois.
Right. Now, are there going to be Republicans who hear of this overturning of Roe v. Wade, and are they going to draft up, and yourself, are you going to draft up something that says, hey, since this was overturned at the federal level, can we get some legislation that puts regulations? Can we bring back parental consent, or you have to get parental consent if you're a minor in order to receive abortion in the state of Illinois? Can we bring that sort of thing back, given the overturning of Roe v. Wade? How does that kind of work on the other side of the aisle?
Yeah, I think, look, first of all, Illinois, the current makeup of the legislature and the governor suggests that there's not going to be new restrictions put in place. Roe v. Wade or not, I think Illinois has gone much too far on abortion rights. They've taken away the right for a parent to receive notification, not even consent, notification if their minor child receives an abortion. They've legalized government-funded, taxpayer-funded abortions. I mean, there are some rights in Illinois that I think have gone much too far. Ultimately, these things become election issues. And I think the outcome of the November election will result in, I think it's going to be a different makeup in the legislature. I think it's possible we have a new governor. And if those things happen, I think parental consent, parental notification, taxpayer-funded abortions, I think those things, become debates next year. And maybe the legislature will revisit them.
Yeah, it's just going to depend on the election because of the whole, they hold the majority and there's not much you can do. Now, I did want to touch back to this prevention grant, this slew of bills. I think it's like $13 million. I don't know if it is in the Senate. Is it in the Senate, that slew of bills, the violence prevention grants that are supposed to combat violence? Now, is that like for statewide, or is it just something that's targeted towards Chicago? And meanwhile, we've got the Safety Act that really, that's our whole problem. I think we got to rip that apart and before we start spending $13 million on violence prevention programs, right?
Yeah, I totally agree. The Safety Act was such an extreme shift in public policy, pitting the rights of criminals against the rights of the cops and sheriffs and law enforcement who help to keep us safe, right? So Pritzker shifted the scales on that significantly. The effect of that is already being felt. Police, we have difficulty recruiting people into law enforcement. People are retiring. You hear from prosecutors who say they're going to have a tough time holding dangerous people. There's a slew of bad outcomes that come from that Safety Act, and I'm hopeful that we can, find some allies and undo that. Mm-hmm. Separate of that, the grants that are out there, this is, Pritzker's attempt to combat violence includes spending money. I mean, there's two things that Governor Pritzker has demonstrated he likes to do: spend money and control people's lives. And his act, instead of holding criminals accountable for the crimes they're committing, Pritzker would rather spend money trying to create anti-violence programs. The history on those programs is mixed result at best. There's been reports of, terrific abuse on those programs. There's been reports about the lack of effectiveness of those programs. But look, Illinois received $16 billion, and rather than fixing some of our fundamental problems, Pritzker decided he just wants to spend more money, create new programs. And look, that's how we got here, Kat. Governors spending money and digging a hole that we just can't get ourselves out of.
Creating problems, then creating solutions to those problems, but those solutions are the problem. It's just this roundabout circle that we're stuck in as Illinoisans. But Jason Berkman, we're pushing up against a break. Where are you going to be at this town hall again? Real quick about the prison. Yep. It could be facing a little bit of shutdowns. Certain wings of this prison could be facing some shutdowns, which means we can't detain prisoners at a scale that we should be detaining them in those prisons. And you're going to host a town hall where again?
Yep, Tuesday night, May 10th, 6:30 p.m. at the Pontiac Township High School.
At the Pontiac Township High School. Be there this Tuesday. This Tuesday.
Yes.
All right.
Tuesday.
Thank you so much, Jason. And thank you so much for all you do. I had saw that you had said something in an article about the hemorrhaging and trying to fix it with a Band-Aid, the hemorrhaging of funds. And then you were like, oh, yes, you're just fixing it with a Band-Aid when I think he was touting our credit score. For the state of Illinois. It went from a BA2 to a BA1, and he was touting that. And I just thanks for helping us out.
Do all the best we can. Look, we need to win some elections, so let's keep to it this November.
Mm-hmm. Bye-bye, Jason. All right, coming up on Conservative Cat Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal, I'm going to talk with you about Sharon Chung and this campaign tactic. And then we're also going to talk a little bit about Richard Irvin and what it truly means to have a good governor in the state of Illinois, because if we don't have officers, hey, it's Conservative Cat Cities 92.9. Be a part of the show. Please call in 309-451-9299. You can also text me 309-451-9299. 309-451-9299. I really want you to be a part of this show because we need to start standing up, especially when it comes to our men and women in blue. I'm sick of seeing police officers dying. I'm sick of seeing correctional officers dying. I'm tired of hearing my friends who are in this sort of work talking about how they have pee thrown onto them and feces thrown onto them. That's correctional officers. I have friends who are correctional officers who tell me that this is probably the worst job. It is a job straight out of hell. Now, according to John Sandage, he's our McLean County Sheriff here in the Sheriff's Office, and this is one thing that I've got to say. We'll get into the gubernatorial races later. You have got to get a hold of those sheriff's offices. You have got to. If you are going to win this election, you have to get a hold of those sheriff's offices because 9 times out of 10, right, you're going to know who your sheriff is. You just know who your sheriff is and you respect the hell out of your sheriff because he's the guy keeping you safe. He's the guy that can send out a deputy if you need anything at all. And the work that John Sandage and the work that they have done. I mean, when this mass shooting happened in Normal, I remember here, hold on. Let me play for you some of the sounds of that 911 call that happened that day. And if you still think that our cops are racist and they need to be defunded, and if you're for things like the Safety Act, get out of my face. Get out of my face. Let me play for you this clip of a 911 call that happened. You remember the Normal mass shooting, a tragedy. Here's the clip.
Get my own gun.
Okay, we've got numerous officers on the way. Please don't do that. I don't want them to think that you're the suspect, okay?
Right.
But try to keep a safe distance and try to stay out of his view, okay?
I'm trying. I'm trying to keep an eye on him, but not sure where the he's at. I'm not sure where the he went. I'm trying to relocate him. Oh, I just heard another gunshot, man. I just heard another gunshot.
So this guy is on the call with the 911 operator, and this Normal mass shooting was absolutely insane. Now, I don't know if any of you remember it, so I'll give you a refresher. This is why we back the blue, and this is why they deserve our utmost respect. Now, I will say that there are cops out there who take advantage of that respect, the badge. However, not here. I really don't think here in Bloomington Normal. Some might, the ones who arrest you for a mask, I'm telling you right now, I just don't understand that at all. And we have to be careful because we are in a position right now where government is starting to get stronger and stronger. And it's going to be up to our police officers and it's going to be up to our county sheriffs to stand on the side of those who respect and want to fund them and who understand what kind of work they do. So the police were justified in the shooting of a 66-year-old man who shot 5 people, killing 2. And it was in Normal at that mobile park home. And the authorities released this 911 call audio and footage from the officers' body cams. And it was just a war zone. To know that is something you are going towards as an officer, to know that is what you are up against and you still go anyway, that's remarkable. And Sharon Chung, she is creating danger for people like those people who run towards gunfire. She's putting out false information into these inmates' heads, which creates tensions in the facility. When you have inmates that are being told by a county board member that they're doing things that are illegal and that the McLean County Jail is doing something illegal, they're going to rebel. Now, I had mentioned that I believe that this could be part of a bigger ploy, and this is why I say that. So this NPR article about these Illinois guards beating an inmate, this is why I think it's part of a bigger ploy here in the state of Illinois. So this trial begins for Illinois guards. They were accused of beating a prisoner so severely that he died. What if, now hear me out, what if the Illinois Democratic Party is trying to stir up trouble by getting their candidates in all of these state districts and all of these candidates within even running down to the normal town council? What if they are saying, hey, make some pen pals within the prison, start to stir up some trouble, so that way when inevitably these guards have to beat a prisoner and have to beat them to submission and have to use of force, right? That's a thing in order to subdue an inmate from causing more harm, then that's when they will start their defund the police movement, because you've got 2 prison guards here in Illinois. And now this was from April 13th of 2022. And this is on an NPR All Considers thing. They said that they beat the 65-year-old Larry Irvin so severely that he died, and that a 3rd guard has already pleaded guilty. Now, I don't know the whole situation, but what if, and the Illinois Department of Corrections, what if they didn't answer a detailed list of questions about the blind spot where the men reported being beaten? So there was a blind spot there. I would not put it past the Democratic Party that they're trying to stir up some stuff here in our state in order for these cops to be made out to be killers. I mean, what are you to do when an inmate comes after you and starts to rebel against you? I also wanted to touch on this. Approximately 500,000 correctional officers are responsible for supervising more than 2 million inmates. And I tried to do some digging on some statistics regarding correctional officers' deaths. The most recent study that I could find was in 2015. Now, why do you think the Bureau of Labor Statistics aren't doing studies on correctional officers dying and work-related injuries? Why do you think that is? Because they know they're astronomical. They know. And they're not performing studies anymore on it. So a 2015 study said that 153 work-related injuries per 10,000 full-time equivalent employees due to assaults and violent acts. This past week was Correctional Officer Appreciation Week. In this past week, there were also 11 names added to the Illinois State Police Memorial. I just saw it. I went for a tour today at the Illinois Capitol, and I saw the names of Chris Oberheim and Ellie French, and among so many others in the latest, Nick Weist being ran down by a criminal. These people are pro-criminal. And I wanted to talk about this, and it needs to stop. Despite getting tax incentives from Chicago and the state, Boeing is now leaving the state of Illinois. Lured by millions of dollars in tax incentives from Chicago and the state of Illinois 21 years ago, the marriage between Boeing and the state is coming to an end. Hey, it's conservative. Hey, text in. Will you text in for me? 309-451-9299. I surely do appreciate you being a part of the show. So just before September 11th, 2001, the terrorist attacks, the company was just showered with $60 million in tax incentives to come to the state of Illinois from Seattle. And it had been the home there for 85 years. Now, Chicago was in competition with Denver and Dallas. Boeing's decision to leave Illinois is incredibly disappointing. Every level of government in our state has worked to make Chicago and Illinois a perfect home for Boeing's headquarters in the past 20 years. Dick Durbin had said this. He also said, we are working together to ensure Boeing leadership both understands how harmful this move will be and does possibly everything possible to protect Illinois workers and jobs. We are losing a lot of people. Boeing estimated it had 513 full-time employees in Chicago, but its current corporate headquarters, a 36-floor skyscraper in the Loop, has described this as a ghost town ever since the COVID-19 pandemic. It is because crime is running rampant, and it is a cesspool of liberal politics in Chicago. And Boeing and the people who are employees of Boeing, they just cannot stand it anymore. They're moving to Virginia. They're getting out of there. An analysis done by Better Government Association found that Boeing fell short of the promised 500 employee mark for at least 4 years. Chris Edwards, he's a director of tax policy with the Cato Institute. He said he was never a fan of tax incentives for big companies. So this is what they're trying to do. The state of Illinois has tried to lure this business instead of fixing the corrupt politics that are the state of Illinois. They are literally just, the answer is right in front of them, and they choose not to look at it. Look at it. Look at the state. Look at the debacle that you have put us in. This governor office, and I will say, and I will go as far as to say, maybe even more so the attorney general. Now, I'll get into, why I think if I were voting today, I would vote Dave Shestokas. And here's why. I love Tom DeVore. It's not that I don't like Tom DeVore. I'm super psyched he's in the race. The reason why I don't like Tom DeVore is because I feel like there is just a one issue candidate there. And that's just my 2 cents on it, right? I just think it's a one issue candidate. We need somebody who is going to keep our state's attorneys in line. That's the whole point, because the attorney general is supposed to work on behalf of the people, and they are supposed to be keeping our state's attorneys in line and when it comes to crime. Also, David Stoke is very big on election fraud. I think we are at a point right now, if there is not candidates who are going into Springfield and calling for a constitutional convention, ripping apart that Constitution, taking away the Article 2 Amendment, Article 2, Section 2. This is absolutely disgusting. I'm going to read it for you here one more time. This is, I can't believe that it is the powers of the state, right? This is what the Article 2 has to deal with. It says, the enumeration in this Constitution of specified powers and functions shall not be construed as a limitation of powers of state government. Says that you plebs over here in the state of Illinois, don't get your facts all screwed up in a bunch. The reason why we have this Constitution isn't for our limitation of powers. No. Of course not. What? This is in our Constitution. We need to upend this. And then I will also read to you the provisions of the Illinois Constitution as it regards to the Second Amendment, how they changed it from what it states in our U.S. Constitution. It says, the Illinois Constitution provides subject only to the police of power. It prefaces this right, your Bill of Rights, the state right to bear arms in Illinois says this, subject only to the police power. What? So police can take away your right to keep and bear arms, but it shall not be infringed. So why in the world is our right to bear arms subjected to the police power? It says this. The Second Amendment of the Constitution, U.S. Constitution, says a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of the free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. A well-regulated militia. It even says, it goes as far as to say that we are a well-regulated militia. We are a form of military, we the people. But the state of Illinois says, no. The police can take away your Second Amendment right. Also, another Illinois story that I wanted to hit on before I get into the gubernatorial race here, and I know that, and if I were voting for today, Darren Bailey. Right, Darren Bailey and the work he has done as a state senator and the work that he has done with a core group, the Adam Niemerg, Brad Holbrick, Dan Calkins, I know I'm forgetting a few, those Republicans, and the Republican Party is split, right? We have those people, the legacy Republicans, as let's try to give them a name, right? And I had visited the Springfield Capitol today. We were talking to the tour guide, and it was a great experience. And his name was Joel, and he was talking about how there is a split within the Republican Party. You've got the Jim Durkins, you've got the established Republicans who don't want to upend the status quo. And then you've got the squad or the legacy Republicans. Now, my fear would be that these Republicans are trying to create a legacy for themselves rather than for the people. And if they aren't coming out, and from what I understand is a lot of these Republicans, the Darren Baileys, the Brad Holbrooks, with Dan Calkins, Adam Niemerg, they have come out and said that we need an Illinois constitutional convention, and that's the only way that this is going to solve our problem in Illinois. I don't even know if a governor would solve our problems. I really don't.
That's how corrupt we are, folks. That's how corrupt this all is. We need to rethink Illinois politics because the Michael Madigans of Illinois, the J.B. Pritzkers of Illinois, have taken our Constitution and have completely ripped it apart. You know, the parental consent, that provision where it says parental consent in order to get an abortion. You know how Governor J.B. Pritzker took all of that away? That was all done unconstitutionally. We have in the state of Illinois a law on the books that says that you cannot get an abortion without notifying your parent. You know what happened during some sort of veto session or something? Governor J.B. Pritzker decided we shouldn't have that law anymore. And you know what's dangerous there? There is a judicial branch. There is a judicial branch that says that they can take a law and then they can, vote on that law via. So something has had to have happened in order for us to change that law about parental consent. So say a kid, there was something there with them wanting to get an abortion, and it went all the way up to the Illinois Supreme Court. There, the judicial branch can fight it out, and they can decide whether or not they want that law to remain the way it is supposed to be in the books. Governor J.B. Pritzker decided to take it into his own hands and just completely take the law off the books entirely. We remember this from the Right of Conscience Act. The Right of Conscience Act said that you had the right to your conscience, and if whatever you wanted to happen with your body in regards to your health, you could go as far as to say that I have a right to me not being vaccinated. I have a right to take myself out of that equation of being vaccinated if I feel my religion does not agree with it. That act, the Right of Conscience Act, was an established law for 22 years. And I harp and I harp and I harp and I try to say this was an established law for 22 years. Governor J.B. Pritzker used a fall veto session in order to upend that law. In order to upend that law, you cannot, as an executive branch, do that. It's just not constitutional, but it is because it's baked in the cake that it is. And it's that Article 2, Section 2. It says that the state government cannot have any limitations on their power. That's what it says in our Illinois Constitution, folks. And it takes things from our U.S. Constitution, it changes them, it alters them. It is not the same as the U.S. Constitution when it comes to our Bill of Rights. So in the state of Illinois, the police can infringe on your right to bear arms. Hey, now, is that right? How you doing? It's conservative. Is that right? Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. Be a part of the show. Text in 309-451-9299. Now, today I spent my afternoon touring the state capitol. I've never done this before. I've always wanted to legit go on a tour. I've been to the state capitol multiple times to do a couple of stories. Now, one thing I did want to talk about just to lighten it up here on Conservative Cat, and you can always catch this show 5 to 7 on Saturday, always. And you can head to cities929.com for the podcast. We're wrapping it up here, but our tour guide, Joel, he was talking about Lincoln and Douglas, right? And they had gone up against each other in the presidential nomination. Now, the Lincoln-Douglas debates were a series of formal political debates between the challenger Abraham Lincoln, the incumbent, and Stephen Douglas in a campaign for one of Illinois' 2 U.S. state Senate seats. Now, at the time, there was no popular vote. It wasn't up to us. So you know how we can elect a Peggy Hubbard, a Bobby Piton, who else is on the ballot, Kathy Selvey. This, primary election, how we go and we elect those people. That wasn't the case back then. In the 1800s, it was the Illinois senators who would elect the U.S. Senate seats. Crazy, I know, right? The reason why I'm bringing this up is that these series of debates that they had were done in the public eye. And what I learned today was really kind of cool. The debates were hosted in the public eye, and Lincoln and Douglas had been best pals. They were from the same state and from the same town, right? So they were in cahoots with each other, essentially.
So they had paid the Chicago Tribune and, another one. It was, I think, the Chicago Times. And they had paid these reporters to come out to these debates. Now, you might ask yourself a question. Why in the world would Lincoln and Douglas, why in the world would they go and perform these debates in the public eye when the public wasn't voting them in? And they weren't getting the popular vote like we do now for those U.S. Senate seats. Our U.S. Senator Dick Durbin, Tammy Duckworth, they were elected by us, the people, at the ballot box. We marked their name. That didn't happen in the 1800s. What happened was Illinois senators, so like the Darren Baileys, the Dan Calkins, the Jason Barrickmans, they would elect U.S. senators. Crazy. Now, why in the world would they perform these debates in front of people? The reason why was because they wanted to control the narrative around slavery, and they paid the Chicago Tribune, and the Chicago Tribune at the time was supposed to be the Republican take on slavery, and they were supposed to print favorably in the eyes of Abraham Lincoln, and it was supposed to be the Republican take, whereas Stephen Douglas, he was going to have the Democrat take, and there was a publication that was supposed to be a lefty or a Democrat publication, and at the time, lefty was not like lefty, right? And I call them, they were Democrat. At the time, it was Democrat take of the publication. So that's kind of interesting because this dates back all the way and it talks about these narratives. And we have a Lincoln and we have a Douglas who were in kind of cahoots with each other and decided to do these debates publicly and go, and do a series of debates for this U.S. Senate seat, even though they didn't have to. They didn't have to appeal to the public. What they wanted to do was create a narrative around slavery. And they did so by paying media and trying to get them to jump on the bandwagon of those narratives and to print things about slavery in order to control the narrative then. The reason why I bring this up is because it's so relevant today. It is so relevant today. The only other time, we've had kind of an election quite like that is Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. They were from the same state. And they went up against each other in 2016. And we have seen how divisive our media is. And the reason why is because these candidates, even back then, understood the power of controlling a narrative and trying to get a narrative and get a narrative on the ballot rather than names on the ballot. Shifting gears a little bit here. Elon Musk, he plans to fire 1,000 Twitter staff and get $69 million users paying $3 a month and cut the reliance on advertising income. Wow, this is huge. So Elon Musk, he's planning to quintuple Twitter's revenue from $26.4 billion by 2028. In a pitch deck, Musk claimed he would increase Twitter's annual revenue to $26.4 billion by 2028, up from $5 billion last year. This is huge. So he's going to be making money off of this thing, and he's not using advertisers. So this is kind of a big deal. And the reason why I switched over to this topic is because it gets at that issue of, okay, what kind of narratives are going to be on here and why? So now that you don't have the obligation of trying to appease your advertisers, and we had seen that the Klaus Schwabs, the George Soroses, they were demanding that Elon Musk, or demanding the advertisers of saying, hey, don't advertise with Elon. Don't do it because he is a disinformation spreader, blah, 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 blah. And we had George Soros pretty much dictating whether the advertisers should be advertising on Twitter. So he just said, I'll scratch it. So he plans to boost Twitter's user numbers with services such as Twitter Blue. So Twitter Blue costs are $3 a month for users to customize their experience. So it sounds like it's going to be for free, but there's going to be this Twitter Blue where it's $3 a month for users to customize their experience. Musk expects 69 million users to be using Twitter Blue by 2025. Elon Musk is planning to fire 1,000 staffers from Twitter as soon as his purchase of the social media platform is complete. It's believed he will fire many of the firm's woke staff following the transfer of ownership, which will take place around 6 months. And at which time Musk is likely to wield the axe. He's going to start chopping people off. But then within the next 3 years, Musk anticipates making thousands of new hires, swelling the ranks to around 11,000 employees from 7,500 currently. So he wants to employ even more people. Much of this new talent is likely going to be from the field of engineering. So not gender studies. Okay. Numbers at the company would fluctuate, rising to 9,225 employees this year before falling to 8,332 in 2023, then adding a further 200 and 700 workers by 2025. So he's going to be playing with this axe, and he's going to be trying to change up the criteria of these woke Twitter employees. On a company level, Musk has previously floated the idea of closing down the San Francisco headquarters in order to save money, and that the board members may also not receive a salary, shaving off another $3 million in expenses. This is how you run a company. This guy knows how to run a company, and he knows how to monetize tweets. And this is what he plans to do. And I think that we need to move away from advertisers. We need to move away from those corrupt corporations that have a political motive. All right, shifting gears here again, a peer-reviewed study covering 35 European countries, 35 of them. That's a lot. And it indicates that countries with high levels of mask compliance did not perform better than those with low mask usage. Moreover, the moderate positive correlation between mask usage and deaths in Western Europe also suggests that the universal use of masks may have had some unintended harmful consequences. Yes, so the studies are coming out and they are screaming because they're scared. They are scared, folks. When they are busy putting abortion on the ballot and they are using the narrative and they are paying these advertisers, paying and incentivizing these corrupt corporations to put abortion on the ballot. And the reason why you haven't seen it yet is because they're holding it. These corporations are going to be taking a stance on abortion. Make no mistake. They are going to take a stance on abortion and they're going to put abortion on the ballot instead of inflation, instead of the fact that Pfizer and Moderna, they only have an efficacy rate of 12%. They are going to be putting this abortion garbage on the ballot. And the reason why I didn't bring it up today was at all. I mean, I'm bringing it up now, but the reason why I didn't bring it up at all today is because that's not what's on the ballot. We have to remain focused. Inflation is on the ballot. The fact that our Illinois Constitution is broken, the fact that the corruption is baked in the cake is on that ballot. And you have to do your due diligence on these candidates. And for any of you who have missed any kind of interview that I've ever done with a political candidate, you can go to cities929.com, get educated on who's that ballot, because it is going to change Illinois. This primary election is going to change Illinois. Hey, that's all the time we've got. We've pushed up against the clock. You guys have a great rest of your weekend. Bye-bye. Love you.